Director for Ile-de-Paix, IDP. Mr. Ludovic, please wave to the participants. And then we have Professor Dufumia, who will be our main speaker today. We have the representative of French Embassy. Please wave to participants. And then we have the ambassador for the Kingdom of Belgium. And our guest of honor, we will introduce him when the time comes. But please just wave. Just wave. Yeah. So those people, they will all have time to speak one after another, and we'll hear their voices later. So once again, welcome everybody to this conference on agroecology. May I take this time now to welcome Mr. Ludovic to introduce what does this program mean.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Maybe just before starting, I just want to welcome all the participants. So in addition to the French and the Belgian embassy, the regional office, and Mr. Dufumier, we have a representative of different organizations here. So we have development partners, Trias, Ricoto, Eco, UCRT, and there are many. Sorry, don't be frustrated if I don't mention your name. Thank you to be here. We have also representative of public institutions and research institutions. So again, thank you for being here today. And we have also staff of the regional office. And thank you, Mr. Chitukuro, to be here today. So, dear Ambassador of Belgium, dear representative of the French Embassy, dear Regional Administrative Secretary of Arusha, dear Marc Dufumier, and dear participants. So the mission of Marc Dufumier in Tanzania has been initiated by Ile-de-Paix and supported by the French and the Belgian embassies. The objective of this conference is to sensitize participants and stakeholders on agroecology and its role towards sustainable food systems. In the current global context, agroecology is a pathway to guarantee the right to food for all, without compromising the economic, social, and environmental foundations. Ile-de-Paix promotes agroecology in the Arusha region since 2015 and supports small-scale farmers from sustainable production to marketing and consumption. So with this conference today, it's our hope that more and more stakeholders and partners will promote agroecology in Arusha region, but also in Tanzania. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ludovic, for this introduction. And therefore, I call upon the representative of French Embassy to say something about agroecology in this conference.
Asante sana. So, sorry for my voice. His Excellency, a representative of the regional office in Arusha, His Excellency, Ambassador of Belgium, dear Marc Dufumier, dear Ludovic, Director of Ile-de-Paix, thank you so much for organizing this conference this afternoon on this topic, very important for the French Embassy. So just a few words to tell you why France is supporting agroecology. So, as I said this morning to the students, for France, support agroecology is because agroecology has a long-term vision opposite to the conventional agriculture, who has a short-term vision. So for France, it's very important to support agrology in France, for sure, but also in Africa, because of the challenges we have to face with the climate change. So agroecology promotes also the climate change adaptation and mitigation. And as I said this morning to the students, agroecology is also innovative. I repeat, agroecology is innovation. It's not the technique from the past. It is the technique for the future. And that's why I told this morning to the students that they have to think about the markets. They have to think about the economic opportunities here in Tanzania, for sure, but also at the international level. Because as you know, in France, in Europe, in the United States, in all over the West world, I mean, there are a demand for organic products. There are a demand for an organic product, so it means that for the Tanzanian people, for the young Tanzanian people, if they are able to produce organic, they can sell it abroad, but they also can sell it here in Tanzania. Because with the campaign, with the awareness, with the strategy on communication toward the Tanzanian people can also know that it's better for them to eat healthy products. It's good for their children, it's good for their wife, it's good for the people. So it's not a privilege for the Western country to eat organic. It has to be also a privilege for the Tanzanian people. And that's why it's really, really important, I want to focus on that, to increase the awareness here in Tanzania. It's important for your young students who can create startup on that topic, and it's important for your people. Because you know, in France, for instance, in my own family, we have some people who have cancer. You have cancer among the children. And this is one of the causes of this cancer is pesticides. So really, once again, I really think that agroecology is the way to go forward. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Agroecology is the way. That is last words she talked about. May I ask the owner of this vehicle T292DDM to go outside there? You are blocking somebody. The owner of T292DDM. Mwenye gari namba T292. Asante. Okay, I will now call upon the ambassador for the Kingdom of Belgium to speak briefly on agroecology. Karibu. This is on.
Asante. Habari za mchana. Mimi ni balozi wa Ubelgiji. Ninajua kitu moja. Kilimo endelevu ni muhimu. I try my best, yes. Now, let me thank, first of all, Île de Paix, because they brought Marc Dufumier here. And he is really, they said it this morning, a house of knowledge. But before coming to that, I want to be recognizing the presence of the RAS, the Regional Administrative Secretary, and the Deputy of the RAS, who was joining us yesterday during the field visit. And I have found that very important because agroecology, it's also need a pat on the back from the government. And if the government is there, they are showing willingness to do that. So let me be very recognizing your role you have to play, because your presence means something, and it means something for agroecology. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for your presence here. Okay? Now, me myself, I have been witnessing the holistic approach by this kind of agriculture, of way of doing of agriculture. And what I saw yesterday is, well, a very practical example of what it means. It was a very successful farmer, but doing a lot at the same time, combining animal husbandry together with the planting of the bananas, but he did that in a special way. He looked at the spacing of the banana plants. There were the beehives all around. He had a fence made of passion fruit. He planted a boga. He had a water tank. And it was so good to see that this was a farmer who was making it. Now, this is all kind of things that we know. Farmers know how to do that. But now there have been some question between commercial farming and this kind of farming. The professor here, he will come and he will give you an explanation, scientific explanation, why agroecology is so important. It will take a long time, but I'm sure that at the end, if you leave this presentation and you are not convinced by agroecology, you have not been listening. So I'm very sure that you will be convinced. Now, let me excuse myself, because I have to leave here at 3 o'clock. I have to take my plane to go to Dar es Salaam. But I'm grateful that I was here. And the professor, he has assured me that he will not change one word in his speech, otherwise I would have stayed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Kilimo endelevu ni muhimu sana, that's what he said. And he gave witness that he went around in Karatu and he saw practically how kilimo endelevu is practiced. And so because of time, we would like to have more presentations, but may I now invite our guest of honor, the Regional Administrative Secretary, Mr. Richard Kuitega, to inform us about the position of the government on agroecology. Karibu sana.
Honorable Peter Van Acker, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Belgium in Tanzania. I know you'd be rushing to catch your flight very soon, but I'll quote one word you have said, kilimo endelevu. As you said, I think we shall call Honorable Cecil Forbes from the French Embassy in Tanzania, Prof. Marka Defumia, the main speaker, and I think we shall hear a lot from you, the Director of IDP, Sir Ludovic Jory, researchers from different research institutions and the university, staff from my office, Mr. Chitukulo and others, all partners, organizations, and invited guests. Should I say bon après-midi? Good afternoon. Habari za mchana. Ambassador, how do I speak? How do I say in your word? Eh? Who? ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon all. I'm Richard Ikwitega, the Arusha Regional Administrative Secretary. First and foremost, I have the pleasure to thank the organizers of this important conference, the IDP, in collaboration with the Nelson Mandela, with the support of the Belgium and French embassies. I'm very much delighted and feel greatly privileged to be invited here this afternoon to this great conference, which has a very important theme that touches the livelihood of the people and their future destiny, as it says, agroecology as a pathway toward the sustainable food system, as I see it here. It is an honor to address such a distinguished gathering of all organizations in Arusha and other regions that are dealing with agriculture and, mostly important, with the agroecology, as this stage where Tanzania has just entered, the middle-income country, and agriculture being among the driving forces. Dear ambassadors, let me, on behalf of the government of Tanzania, thank the government of Kingdom of Belgium for the good work that is being done in our country in fostering development activities in collaboration and through different partners on the ground. I'm personally the witness of Island of Peace effort in driving a sustainable, inclusive, health and climate resilient food sovereignty and system through the Kilimo Endelevu program in Karatu and the Kilimo Endelevu Plus, which I personally participated during its launching in June 2020. I think, Ludovic, you remember. As a government also, we recognize and appreciate all the work and the interventions that other Asian development partners, such as Trias and Ecology, are doing here in Arusha and in other areas of Tanzania. The Belgian government also has been supporting projects at this Nelson Mandela since 2012 through the VLL USC program. We thank them very much for that. Dear representatives of the French embassy, in the same way, I would like to thank you, the government of France, for the work to support development activities in Tanzania. France is committed to a changing production models in order to combine economic, social, and environmental high performance. Amongst others, the French embassy in Tanzania is supporting a coalition of actors implementing agroforestry and agroecology projects in Lindi and Mtwara regions. Through its French development agency, France de Development, France is funding the IIABA project to support institutional innovations for organic agriculture to scale up agroecology practices in Tanzania, Uganda, and Morocco. We congratulate you very much for that, and should we clap hands for that? Agriculture, ladies and gentlemen, is an essential pillar of the United Republic of Tanzania's economy and a key driver of rural development. In fact, the sector employs over 7-8% of the population. It contributes to the approximately 95% of the national food requirements It provides livelihood to more than 70% of the population, and it accounts for about half of the gross domestic product and export earning. However, the majority of households in Tanzania are small-scale farmers who produce at subsistence level and are more vulnerable to climate change impacts. Specifically, the United Republic of Tanzania is already experiencing the adverse impact of the climate change. I know, Honorable Ambassador, you went through the Karatu and other areas yesterday, and you came here. I think you have seen some of the changes in the climate rate affecting some part of our areas. Dear participants, in response to the climate change and challenges on food and nutrition security, the United Republic of Tanzania has been undertaking various efforts at the national level, including the development of the National Adaptation Program of Action of 2007, the National Climate Change Strategy of 2012, the Agriculture Climate Resilient Plan of 2014 to 2019, Plant Health Bill, and also under Agriculture Sector Development Program 2, ASDP 2, Promotion and Development of Climate Smart Agriculture and Conservation Agriculture Technologies are among the prioritized programs which are taking place in our areas at the national. Ladies and gentlemen, the government of Tanzania believes that promoting agroecological principles and practices can play a key role in strengthening sustainable food system and also contributes to farmers' livelihood. Agroecology is an integrated approach that simultaneously applies ecological and social concepts and principles to the design and management of food and agricultural system. It seeks to optimize the interactions between plants, animals, and the environment while taking into consideration the social aspects that need to be addressed for the sustainable and fair food system. Agroecology, as a key part of the global response to the climate instability, is offering a unique approach to meeting significant increases in our food needs of the future while ensuring no one is left behind. It's my hope, and I hope, that this conference, which we are in today, will enable us to bring positive changes to improve the way we work. As I see many faces here and understand some of the stakeholders here, the way we collaborate to make sure our agroecological agenda is pushed forward for the benefit of our farmers and government at large. As a government, we promise, Honorable Ambassador and the representative of the French Embassy and our lecturer here, Ludovic, we promise to continue to provide our maximum support to all partners and stakeholders, not only those who are here, who are determined to support and promote a sustainable farming system and a climate resilient food sovereignty and food system in our country. Honorable Ambassador and the Haiti Batlat, having said that, I wish you a fruitful deliberation. I now announce that the conference on agroecology as a pathway towards sustainable food system, and as written here, is officially opened. Thank you again for your kind attention. Asante sana. Merci beaucoup. The other way? Bedang. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much, our RAS. And we've heard the promise of the government on their willingness to support agroecology based on the several factors. One of it is being 97% of, more than 70% of the population dwells on agriculture by the small-scale farmers. And in order to support this, the government will support agroecology and agroecology farming systems. Based on this, I will now invite our main speaker to have presentation. I know in the morning the time was short. Now we have enough time so that we hear from the bank of knowledge, Professor Dofumia. Please, karibu sana. Okay, the high table may sit down there so we see the presentation.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, yes, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to tell you that I am very pleased to be here with you, and I would like to thank ILDEP and the other associations for inviting me today. And I would like also to apologize because my English is not very well. I speak English, but not very well. So I try to do my best and explain what agroecology, what is about. Agroecology for sustainable agricultural development, a pathway towards sustainable food system, is the topic for today. Maybe we can remind the main challenges in our planets today. And I think the first challenge is to feed an overgrowing population to feed properly and sustainably an overgrowing population. And of course, the idea is to also to meet the basic needs of this overgrowing population. It will be the first goal for this afternoon. Now, the idea is to provide a very good product, very good food, very high quality sanitary food, of course. That means food without hormones in milk, without antibiotics in meat, without endocrine and disruptor in fruit and legumes, without poison. Very safe food. Now, other goal is to provide, of course, diversified raw materials for industries, maybe wood, maybe fiber, maybe medicinal molecules and so on. Of course, we have to provide this kind of products, of course. Fourth goal will be to ensure a decent income for farmers. That means maybe we can promote new farming systems more in line with the environment. But we have to check if these new farming systems give a decent income for small farmers, of course. We have to ensure a decent income for farmers and for small-scale farmers, it's obvious. Other goal, the idea is to provide food, to provide raw materials for industries, but without damage, of course, for our living environment. That means without biodiversity losses, without any pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, air pollution, food pollution, of course. We have to promote new farming systems without this damage. And we have to think about the future generations. That means we have to check if the new farming system inspired by agroecology will not damage the productive potential of our ecosystems, of our agroecosystems, of our natural ecosystems, of course. We have to check if new farming system won't damage this fertility. When I was a student, they told me soil fertility. Now, when as a senior lecturer, I teach ecosystem fertility, agroecosystem fertility. That means that the productive potential of our ecosystems, it's not only humus of soil, but it's a biodiversity, auxiliary insects, and so on. We have to protect our wild and domestic biodiversity in our ecosystem. And after that, that means promoting sustainable agricultural development as a pathway towards sustainable food system. But we have to reach all these goals. It's impossible to put priorities. We have to feed an overgrowing population. Is the problem of production. Food quality is quality problem. Safe, high quality sanitary food. And of course, decent incomes is a social problem. It's an economical problems, and so on. So we have to reach all these objectives, all these goals, if you agree. Now, the context. The context is not very good. The context is first, of course, you know, the global warming. But global warming means a chaotic climate. That means not only global warming, but intensity and frequency of hazards, of climatic hazard, increasing frequency and intensity of these extreme weather accidents. A more chaotic climate. Of course, maybe we should promote farming systems more resilient, of course, in order to face this increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather hazards. The context, in many countries, cities are expanding on the best arable land, and it's a very big problem. The more fertile lands are occupied now by with urbanization, no? With expansion of cities on the best arable lands. Now, the context is also scarcity of non-renewable resources. Scarcity of non-renewable resources, of course, we think first fossil fuels. We know that. Fossil fuels are fossil. So we don't have to use a lot of fossil fuels. The modern agriculture, the agriculture for the future, will have to save fossil fuel, not use a lot of fossil fuels, of course. But another problem is phosphate. Mines are limited, and maybe for the next generation, scarcity of phosphate will occur. That's a very, very big problem we have to resolve, of course. Scarcity of non-renewable resources, fossil fuels, phosphate, and of course, their increasingly cost. Currently, the cost of phosphate fertilizer, the cost is increasing in every country. No? Biodiversity losses. Biodiversity losses means imbalanced ecological difficulties, many difficulties in order to produce more and better. Biodiversity loss. We have to protect the biodiversity, wild biodiversity, and we'll see domestic biodiversity too, varieties and so on. We have to protect this biodiversity. And of course, the context, and we know that it's poverty. Poverty in rural areas, poverty of farmers which cannot compete in the international market, in the world market. They cannot compete, and they are very poor because they are not able to compete with motorized, mechanized, and robotized technologies in other countries. And many farmers has to leave the rural areas and to go to the cities without employment. Poverty is poverty of farmers who live or who left their rural areas without employment, without job in the cities. In some cases, some farmers try to migrate to North Country, and as you know, there is no free market of labor force in the world. It's very difficult for them to migrate, and I think one goal may be ensure decent income for farmers so that they are able to feed correctly, properly, and sustainably their nation. Food sovereignty is maybe a goal in this context, in this very bad context. I don't know if you agree with that, but the idea is to promote new kinds of agriculture, new kinds of farming systems, new kind of cropping system, animal raising system, in line with these objectives in this context. So we can first debate from the pathway toward feeding properly and sustainably an overgrowing population. That means we have to increase the production of safe food and good food for poor people, of course. How? How do we manage that? We are already more than 7.07 million inhabitants in the world, on our planet. And it's growing. And we undoubtedly be more than 9.5 billion inhabitants in 2050. So we have to produce, well, we have to produce more, undoubtedly. Now, growing numbers of humans in emerging countries, growing number of humans are starting to eat animal protein. That means, because we know that it takes from 10 to 10 vegetable calories to produce only 1 animal calorie, only 1. That means that the demand of vegetable production in over the 30 next years will double, about. It's not. So the demand of vegetable production for human and animal consumption, of course, but for human consumption directly or by the way of animal consumption is likely to more than double in the next 30 years. We have to manage this goal. But hunger, the current hunger in the world, the current malnutrition in the world do not result from a shortage of available food, from a lack of available food on the world market. On the world market, we have surplus of food production, a big surplus of food production. But why so many people suffer from hunger and malnutrition? Maybe 820 million of inhabitants suffer from hunger. They cannot get the energy, the food energy, sufficient food energy to spend when working. And 1 million of inhabitants, 1 billion of inhabitants in our planet suffer from malnutrition. Loss of vitamin, loss of minerals, loss of fiber, and loss of proteins. But why? There is a surplus of food in our planet, and so many people are suffering from hunger and malnutrition. It's poverty. It's poverty. Poor people cannot afford to buy excess of food in the world market. Very poor people suffer from poverty. Suffering from poverty, they suffer also from hunger and malnutrition. The main problem in our world today is the inequity of income for farmers in the same world market. Some farmers with only manual tools, they have to compete on products imported from industrialized country with motors, with robots, with chemics, and so on. We have to correct that, this inequity, of course. Now, a lot of people can afford in order to buy the food, but not for feeding. It's for feeding animals, but not humans. For example, in Brazil, we know in Brazil, a lot of small farmers who left rural areas, now they live in shantytown, they live in cities, but they don't have job, they don't have decent income, and they cannot buy the surplus of food production of Brazil, soja of Brazil exported to feed French animals, French pigs. So poor people cannot afford to buy feed, but our pigs, our French pigs, can afford to, well, the feed industries can afford in order to buy food, but not in order to feed humans, but in order to feed animals, like pigs. It's the same with maize, the same with meat of Brazil. So, it's the inequity of revenue can explain it. Surplus of food available on the world market by people, by rich people, in order to feed animals and in order to produce biofuel, in order to give energy, not to human, but to cars and to planes. That means food would be useful for poor people, they cannot afford, and factories buy this food, manufacture biofuels, and so sell for rich men, rich persons, rich inhabitants who use cars, planes, and so on. The main problem in our planet is inequity of income. So I think the new agriculture and many countries have to promote farming systems able to ensure decent income for farmers, but maybe at the international market, maybe the agriculture of some South countries which cannot compete already in the world market, I think maybe they need to protect their domestic market from these imports from individual countries. After that, they can promote farming system, productive farming systems and sustainable farming systems. Now, we know that in order to properly feed one person in our world, it's necessary to produce about, we say, 200 kilograms of cereals, or per inhabitant and per year, or its equivalent in sweet potatoes, potatoes and bananas and so on. And the production, the world production already exceeds 330 kilograms per habitant and per year. It's a surplus of food production in our world. And its surplus is bought not by poor people, but by rich people, rich industries for auto use, but not in order to feed an ever-growing population. By feed factories in order to feed animals, and biofuel factories in order to cars and planes are able to drink biofuel. Now, it's therefore poverty is unexplained why more than 820 million of persons suffer from hunger, and 1 billion more suffer from malnutrition. Now, to promote sustainable food systems, we have to and what is the best pathway towards sustainable food system. The idea is providing high quality food, of course. Well, as you know, everybody knows that in order to avoid all forms of malnutrition, humans must have a healthy and balanced diet. Healthy, balanced diet means every day we need calories, food energy, we need proteins, we need minerals, vitamins, we need fiber, we need antioxidants, and so on. It's obvious that a balanced diet, we need to eat all these ingredients, all these products. Now, of course, we must have a diet balances in calorie, protein, minerals, vitamins, fibers, antioxidants, but we find in food, of course, energy is the first necessity. We need every day to find in food the energy we spend after that, we spend at work. And we can spend in leisure and walking, of course. But it's very important to get 2,200 kilocalories per day. We need to have access to more than 2 every day. Now, we need proteins. The second need, basic needs, protein. We need about from 50 to 80 grams of protein every day in order to renew the proteins of our cells, of our tissues, of the human body. No? So we have to get that. Now, of course, we need minerals, maybe calcium, maybe phosphorus, maybe potash, maybe trace elements. And the main problem is for phosphorus. The perspective of a shortage of natural phosphate in the mines. It's maybe the big problems for the new generations. And we have to try to get solutions, of course, for this problem. Now, we need vitamin, antioxidant, and so you know all that very well. Now, we need fiber too, helps us speed up intestinal transit and protects us against colon cancer. And we need to have access to healthy foods, without antibiotic, without hormones, without endocrine disruptors in fruit and vegetables. Because maybe, for example, in industrial countries, the main problem today is these endocrine disruptors. We can predict for the new generation, the young generation, premature cancers, different cancers. I don't know exactly the name, prostate and so on, and premature Alzheimer, Parkinson, due to the exposition to this endocrine disruptor, and in many cases there are pesticides residues in food. It's a very big problem we have to resolve. Now, agriculture must therefore provide us with healthy and good products without any poison, pesticides, hormone, antibiotic. Please, we don't have to eat all these kind of products in order to protect our health. So, providing high quality food, we have also to adapt farmers. We have to adapt their farming systems to this global farming. This means they have to adapt their farming system to a more chaotic climate. They have to adapt their farming system to increasing intensity and frequency of extreme events, extreme hazards. That means diversification of their farming system, of course. Now, they adapt their farming system to this increasing chaotic climate with increasing random and harass fluctuation, of course. Now, they have to adapt their agricultural production system to the frequency, and they need to change practices in industrial countries and in South countries too, I think. They have to, we have all farmers in the world, I think, have to change their farming systems in order to get this objective in the context of the chaotic climate. But the idea would be farmers will also contribute to the mitigation of this global warming, of this climate change. So they have to adapt their farming system to the new situations, but maybe they can contribute to mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions, and maybe they also contribute to sequester carbon from dioxide and sequester in the biomass first, and after that sequester carbon in soils, in the humus of soil. So by reducing their greenhouse gas emissions, three greenhouse emissions from agriculture. The first one, of course, is carbon dioxide. Emission of carbon dioxide occurs with very extensive agriculture, farming system requiring very big extension means deforestation. And deforestation contributes a lot in the greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide emissions. And it occurs in South country. It occurs in Brazil, it occurs in Congo, it occurs in Malaysia and Indonesia. Deforestation in order to extend new cultivated land. But it's a biodiversity loss, we know that. And its contribution to the global warming and the climate change. So we have to promote, I think, a more intensive agriculture per hectare, but without damaging environment, without emitting greenhouse gas, without emitting carbon dioxide. In North Country, the carbon dioxide is not the third for contribution of agriculture to global warming. It's only the third contribution, because we have forests increasing, but the carbon dioxide emission result from plowing. The carbon of humus in soils are oxidized, and the carbon of humus is converted into carbon dioxide, greenhouse gas. So it differs from country. No? In some countries, we have to promote more intensive agriculture with a better use of this carbon of dioxide in order to sequester in humus of soil. In countries like France, we have to check, to have to promote minimum tillage in order to not destroy the humus of soil. Different attitudes. Methane comes from rumination. Sheep, cows are emitting methane. See, you know, it's all right.
Hello? Hello?
But maybe I have to. No. We can hear me? Oh yeah. Okay. So right. Okay. By reducing their greenhouse gas emissions, carbon dioxide, methane, and the third contribution of agriculture to global warming is nitrous monoxide of nitrogen, nitrous monoxide. In industrialized country, this nitrous monoxide is the first contribution of agriculture to global warming. And we emit this kind of greenhouse gas when spraying synthetic nitrogen fertilizer as urea, ammonium nitrate, and ammonium sulfate. That means in many countries, industrialized countries, but why not? In Africa, the idea would be to reduce and to suppress, to promote new kinds of agriculture without this kind of fertilizers. Fertilizer, in order to manufacture these synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, we need to consume fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are fossils. So it's not adequate to spray synthetic nitrogen fertilizers in North country, but why not in Africa? Maybe too. It's not so useful. We have to look for alternative to this kind of nitrogen fertilization. So urea, ammonium nitrate, ammonium sulfate is a mistake, a past mistake. I think we have to not to follow with that. Now, methane is a gas emitted during the rumination of cattle, goats, and sheep, as you know. And in order to adapt to global warming and in order to mitigate global warming, I think farmers will have to set up more resilient farming systems. More resilient farming systems with more resilient income. That means no putting all their eggs in only one basket, in the same basket. Risky. So we have to reduce risk of hazard consequences. No? So diversification of farming systems will be able to mitigate, mitigate global warming and to adapt the farming system to this chaotic climate. Now, global warming already means progressive migration of numerous plant and animal species. That means in ecological imbalances. We know that some birds migrate 200 kilometers, other only 100 kilometers. But that means imbalance, ecological imbalance, and two zones now. And I think farmers will have to deal with this big problem of ecological imbalances due to the migration, the differential migration. So it's not the same speed, it's not the same distances, and so the interaction and between these wild species, yeah, doesn't work today. And we have to design, farmers will have to implement new farming systems in order to resolve this problem of ecological imbalances in the ecosystem, in the natural ecosystems, of course, but in the agro-ecosystem, of course, also. Now, how can we resolve all these problems? How can we feed properly, sustainably, an overgrowing population with healthy food? In this context, we have to look for alternatives. But we have to take lesson. We have to learn, analyzing the past mistakes. Because the industrial agriculture, for example, in industrialized countries, but in many emerging countries too, have brought the problem of inadaptation to global warming. The past mistake, I think, the idea was good. The idea was, how could we feed its overgrowing population at the lowest monetary cost? That means if hunger, malnutrition comes from poverty, and why? We have to produce more and at always lowest monetary cost. The idea seems very good. Produce mass and at very low. And in order to get this objective, in the past, we try to increase yield per hectare. Why not? Why not? I think we don't have to promote extensive agriculture and deforestation and so on. So the idea of producing more per hectare, increase yield per hectare, well, seems to be good, seems to be right. Now, how can we get this increasing yield per hectare? In the past, I think the first mistake was to promote, we called, and maybe we have been calling, high-yielding varieties. High-yielding varieties. That means I'm not sure that these high-yielding varieties give always high yield per hectare. It depends on the cropping system, of course. But the idea was to select new varieties, few new varieties with very high genetic potential of yield per hectare. Why not? But the problem was we had to compare different varieties in experimental campus. And if we want to compare genetic potential of varieties in experimental campus, of course we have to compare their yields, but all things being equal. The difference of yield don't have to result from here some insects and other parts zero harmful insect. No, we have to compare all things being equal, zero insects and each site of the experimental campus, of course. That means zero insect, zero pathogenic fungi, zero nematodes, zero weeds. And of course, we were able to select high yield varieties with high genetic potential of yield, but the problem was these varieties selected in these conditions, of course, were able to give a very high yield per hectare, but required fertilizers, required pesticides. These few new varieties, we called high-yielding varieties, were varieties demanding, requiring fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, and of course pesticides in order to protect, to prevent proliferation of damage caused by pests and disease. That means new cost of production. I have to buy fertilizers, I have to buy pesticides, I have to buy, and risk of pollution, of course. So it was a past. I think the new agriculture will resolve the problem differently. Maybe we'll have to save, thank you, we have to save, we have to recuperate farmers' varieties, local varieties, tolerant varieties, resistant varieties to pest and disease. And a very high diversity of varieties. Varieties means diversity. But the past, we promote a few number of varieties, standard varieties. In the past, farmers had been selecting varieties adapted, many varieties adapted for their own environment. And with the new high-yielding varieties, we demand that farmers adapt their environment to a very few number of varieties. That means the industrial agriculture required homogenization of environment. Yes, homogenization environment is biodiversity loss. No, it's history of the past. Yeah, it's past. It's, I don't say it's a medium age, but it's not modern. We have to promote new forms of farming system able to get all our goals. So the use of pesticide, we know very well, has contributed to multiple forms of pollution: soil pollution, water pollution, food pollution, air pollution, and so on, with a very high reduction in biodiversity, wild biodiversity, domestic biodiversity, so a number of breeds or varieties, very few, and of course, a poor sanitary quality food waste with pesticide residues, food with endocrine disruptor, meat with antibiotic, milk with hormones, and so on. It's the past. If you agree, I think it's the past. Now, the second way was increasing, producing at the lower monetary cost by increasing labor productivity in order to produce, of course, at the lower cost. But that means in industrial agriculture that labor force replaced by motors, by robots, by mechanization, and so on, and chemicals too. Mechanization, motorization, robotization, specialization, excessive specialization of farming systems in order to get scale economies of scale. Producing with scale economies, monoculture, one equipment, and we can amortize this equipment with a very big surface that we were able to produce at very low monetary cost. In spite of that, we can observe we were able to produce at a very low cost, and currently more than 820 million of inhabitants suffer from hunger and malnutrition. It's true that we were able to produce surplus. It's true. We, of course. But many farmers who were not competitive, well, they had to go to reach cities and so on without employment. It's not a good idea to replace labor force, family labor force, or wage labor force in rural areas by mechanization. Labor force has been replaced by tractors, machines, robots, with a very bad effect, creating unemployment. We have to resolve this problem. The new kind of agriculture will have to resolve this problem of unemployment in rural areas, in cities too, because hunger and malnutrition in the cities come from poverty in rural areas. Farmers who were not able to compete and forced to migrate, premature migration towards cities. So the new agriculture, the new farming system will provide job. Maybe we have to promote farming systems intensive in employment, intensive on job. Per square kilometer, we have to promote a kind of agriculture intensive of job with decent income, of course. So the low biodiversity within agroecosystem has generated strong ecological imbalances with environmental, social, health damages. The economists tell that, they qualify that externalities. That means we were able to produce food at a very low cost. Milk, not so expensive, of course, but the cost is not in the price of milk. The cost is damage for health. The cost is we have to pay the state in order to against pollution and so on. So cost is not in the price of food, but we have to pay a very high cost in damage for health, for environment, and so on. So we have to resolve these past mistakes. How? How could we resolve this problem? I can read Agroecology as a pathway towards sustainable food system. That means we have to, what is exactly agroecology? In my point of view, I think agroecology may be considered first as a scientific discipline. The discipline of agroecologists. Agroecology may be considered as a scientific approach. We'll see a holistic approach, a systemic approach, a new scientific approach of ecosystems managed by producers, by farmers, agricultural ecosystems, agroecosystems. So, as a scientific discipline, I think agroecology may understand first and explain, yes, the functioning and the complexity of this agroecosystem. That means this scientific approach considers that the work object of farmers is not soil, is not cattle, is not crop. It's agroecosystems with a lot of interactions between the physical environment and the living environment, and many interactions in the same agroecosystems. for me, when I was young agronomist, I worked in Madagascar, the isles of Madagascar, and I had to promote farming systems with very high yield varieties of rice, ERA 8. And I had to promote this kind of varieties with high genetic potential of yield per hectare, selected in experimental campus, of course, everything being equal, and it's sure that these varieties were able to get high yield per hectare. But these varieties required, of course, synthetic fertilizer, and very sensitive to pest and disease. This cropping system with this kind of varieties required, of course, a lot of pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides. And farmers, women in this case, told me that it was wrong. It was wrong because we didn't take into account the complexity of this agroecosystem, the rice fields. Of course, I had to see in the rice fields snails, frogs, fish, ducks, in the same rice fields. An agroecosystem, not only with rice, but with animals. And with my synthetic fertilizers, with my pesticides, I was killing their source of protein. Of course, I was able to increase yield per hectare of rice. But the cost was, well, ducks killed, fish killed, snail. All the source of protein were killed. These women, they are not able to read, no? But they told me that I had to consider the rice field as an agroecosystem. Of course, they didn't tell about agroecology scientific discipline. But the lesson I learned that I had to take the complexity of this rice field. Yes, I think the new farming systems will consider that the work object of farmers are not soil, cattle, crops, separate, but we have to take into account this complexity of this new agroecosystem. Agroecosystem which are not completely natural today, of course, but we have to understand this functioning. So agroecology may be also considered as a set of agricultural practices inspired by the agroecology scientific, but taking into account the know-how and the knowledge of farmers. The result of an empirical research of farmers during many years, we can observe there occurred in selection of varieties adapted to local situation and selection of know-how, knowledge, practices effective for farmers. So we have to take into account the result scientific of this discipline, agroecology, scientific discipline, but that means also we have to take into account the knowledge and the know-how of farmers in their situation, in their local situation. We don't have to oppose scientific and empirical knowledge of farmers. No, we have to get the symbiosis, the synergy between these two kinds of. So we need to recognize that farmers develop agroecosystems which are no longer completely natural. Natural is sure, but it's an agroecosystem. The work object of farmers is always an agricultural ecosystem. Each agricultural technique may have an impact on the whole agroecosystem. For example, one crop affected by a pathogenic fungus. Maybe I would like to protect this crop from this pathogenic fungus. So I put pesticides. Oh, we'll see. Maybe I am killing useful fungi in soil, mycorrhizal fungi in soil. A technique in order to protect plants may have impact on the biology of soil. Our pesticides may have many impact, a lot of impact, and very bad impact in, well, depend on circumstances, of course, in the biology, in the soil biology. So we have to take into account nowadays the whole agroecosystem. It's the work object of farmers. And when we assess yields per hectare, when we assess this yield per hectare, we'll have to assess calories yield per hectare, protein yields per hectare, mineral, vitamin yields per hectare, and so on, taking into account all the living species, domestic species in this agroecosystem, not only rice. Now we have to take into account the interactions, the scientific approach, this agroecology approach, is a systemic approach. The scientific discipline focuses on the interaction between biosynthesis and biotop. That means the interaction between the physical environment, climate, soil, parent rocks, and so on, and the living environment, wild species, animal species, vegetable species, fungi, bacteria, and so on, wild and domestic. So we have to, inside the biotop, we have to take into account the interaction between bedrock, soil, climatic factors, of course, and within the biosynthesis, we have to take into account, we have to focus our work, our research, focus on the multiple interactions between the many diverse domestic and wild species, maybe plants, crops, or wild plants, weeds, maybe animals, maybe wild animals, maybe domestic animals, bacteria, fungi, and so on. I think the main, as a scientific discipline, agroecology may be considered as discipline scientific and also as a set of practice, of course, but practice inspired by this result of the agroecology discipline. I don't know if you agree, but if you agree, maybe we can go and consider agroecology like a set of practice, farmers' practices, farmers' techniques in order to feed properly and sustainably the whole humanity and the planet. And maybe we have to consider, for example, maybe for farmers, in order to get decent income and in order to help farmers to produce more per hectare and with more value added, we'll see, maybe we have to minimize cost of production per hectare. It's true in France. In France, we have very high yield per hectare. But with very high yield per hectare, we have a lot of cost. Not only we produce a gross product, but we destroy fertilizers, fossil biofuels, pesticides. We use tractors, a lot of cost, but it's destruction. So in countries like France with excess of cereal, with excess of sugar, with excess of many products, food products, I think the idea is not to increase the yield per hectare, but the value added per hectare. The product, the gross product, but we have to subtract all this cost, all this destruction. We destroy every day. We have been destroying fertilizers, pesticides, and so on. In monetary terms, we have to increase the value added. Now, in some countries, many South countries, of course, we have to get both. More food, less food dependency from abroad. So I think the new kind of agriculture will promote farming system with high yield and also high value added. It's not useful to increase yield if we increase the cost of inputs destroyed. I think in many countries, countries who depend of imports, food imports, I think we have to promote new kind of agriculture, promoting both value added per hectare and gross product and very, very healthy food, of course. So that means we'll try to make a very intensive use of the input free of charge. Input free of charge. For example, solar energy. We know that food energy comes from sunlight. And sunlight is free of charge. Well, the access of land, yes, maybe there is a cost. But sunlight, we have to do the most intensive use of these renewable resources and free of charge. Why not? Sugar, carbohydrate, the kilocalories, the food energy we can eat every day, they are carbohydrates. The plant need carbon. Where crops can get carbon in the carbon dioxide of the atmosphere. And I've been told that there is no shortage of carbon dioxide announced in the coming years. No, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. So why not? Farmers would use the carbon of dioxide, release the oxygen, and with the carbon of dioxide, well, manufacture carbohydrates, sugars, food energy. Photosynthesis. We have to maximize this process of photosynthesis per hectare. Will make a very intensive use of solar energy, renewable and free of charge, and the carbon of carbon dioxide, well, surplus of carbon dioxide, it's not only free of charge, but it's a surplus, and we will try to manufacture more sugar, more carbohydrate, more food energy, and why not sequester carbon of this carbon dioxide in biomass first, in the humus of soil after that. I think the new farming system will use very intensive use of the carbon dioxide in order to provide us with sugars, carbohydrates, and also in order to sequester carbon in the soil. I think we would have to pay, it would be useful to pay farmers when they give this service of general interest. Now, sunlight provides the energy for the photosynthesis. It's obvious. Photosynthesis is a process whereby solar energy is converted into food energy. Sunlight falls down on green leaves, and these green leaves convert solar energy into food energy. That means we have to promote new farming systems with the maximum plant cover. The solar energy have to fall on green leaves, not directly on the ground, but on green leaves. So we have to maintain a very high plant cover on the ground, and green leaves. With green leaves, it's very important. With green leaves, if it's possible, in every season, dry season, rainy season, of course. But if we are able to maintain green leaves in dry season too, we can lengthen photosynthesis. The photosynthesis is this process. No? The crop is able to convert solar energy into food energy, and is able to, with carbon dioxide, to synthesize carbohydrates. Water, it's important, and carbon dioxide from the air are converted into sugars and other carbohydrates, our food energy in our diet. Now, it's very important to manage the rainwater. The rainwater is free of charge. But it's true that the rainwater is very bad distributed in space and in time. With global warming, with chaotic climate, we know that the rainwater is chaotic distribution, rainwater fall, but very, very chaotic. It will be more chaotic in the next, we know that. But it's rainwater is a resource free of charge. So it's important, rainwater, because plants need to take in water, and minerals is too, from the soil through the root hairs in order to transpire. Plants need to take in water from the soil in order to transpire. Well, we transpire too, but in the plants transpire with the temperature, with the wind and so on. Crops, plants transpire more. But we have to drink water if we don't want to dehydrate us. The plants, the crops are able to stop the transpiration. They can stop sweating when the storage, the water storage in soil is very low. That means when what's hot temperature was with wind, not the rainy season, it's a dry season and so on, the plant can resist to hydric stress, can resist to dehydration, but for that, the plants shut the small holes whereby they transpire, through they transpire. But the problem, the carbon dioxide enters the plant by the same way, by these small holes, stomata. We call that stomata. Carbon dioxide enters the plant through stomata. But that means for photosynthesis, crops have to sweat, have to transpire with the small holes opened. But if they are is a lack of water stored in soils, the plants will shut these small holes, and the carbon dioxide is not able to enter the plant, and of course, there is no photosynthesis. That means it's very, very important to lengthen the periods of photosynthesis in order to increase the yield the energy yield per hectare. It's very important to store rainwater in the soil. That means when carbon dioxide enters the plant through this small orifice located on the surface, stomata, we call stomata, and during this process, it's true, oxygen is released. But oxygen is good for respiration, for human respiration. No problem, no problem. So, but in order to get all that, we have to manage very well the rainwater in dry zones, in semi-arid regions, and in every region we have to, of course, we have to avoid dripping, water dripping. We have to promote infiltration of the whole water. All the rainwater has to infiltrate into the soil, not dripping. So we have to avoid dripping of rainwater. But that means maximum plant cover. Maximum plant cover will ensure maximum photosynthesis because maximum green leaves on the soil and the solar energy can be intercepted, can be by crops, of course. But maximum plant cover also will reduce the rainwater dripping, and maybe some fence also, maybe reduce water dripping, reduce flooding in the low parts, but will help this maximum plant cover will help us in order to infiltrate and in order to store rainwater into the soil and not in the valley. So the main problem, I think, in many regions and many countries is the management of this rainwater, and we know that with global warming, the climate is more chaotic, the rainwater will be more chaotic, more hazardous in the future. Rainwater management. If the crop lacks water in the soils, it closes stomata in order to stop sweating and not to dry out. It's true that resist water. By doing this, crops resist water stress. It's true. But by closing stomata, the plants stop photosynthesis because carbon dioxide cannot enter the leaf. Now, we need, in order to increase yield, we need to lengthen the duration of photosynthesis in order to, of crop transpiration, in order to also lengthen the duration of photosynthesis. We need to manage rainwater as we can. We need to store as much water as possible in the top layer of the soil, so that it can be easily absorbed by the root of the plant. It's true. Rainwater can infiltrate into the soil. But the idea now is to hold this rainwater close to the root hairs of crops in the top layer of soil. And we know that clay, for example, is able to hold water in the top layer of soil. But we cannot increase the clay content of soil. It's impossible. We cannot do that. But humus also is able to hold water close to the root hairs of crops. So we have to increase the humus content in soil in order to hold water in the top layer And this water in the top layer of soil will, after that, serve for photosynthesis, for transpiration first, for photosynthesis, of course. We have to increase the humus content of our soils in every country. That in tropical country, the mineralization, the depletion of humus is higher, is quicker than in cold countries, of course. So that means in tropical countries, we have implement new farming system able to sequester more carbon and send always more carbon humus of soil in order to mitigate the global warming, of course, but in order to make the soil more fertile and in order to help crops to have access to more water for the photosynthesis. We have to prevent rainwater from dripping, of course. We have to promote its infiltration into the soil. It's a humus of soil that will hold the water in the arable layer, the top layer of soil. At the root level, it's important to increase this humus content, of course. So, we are in West Africa, in Burkina Faso. Some farmers are setting up filtering barriers. The idea is to reduce the dripping of rainwater, of course, and it's not only reduce the speed of rainwater dripping. And after that, if we can reduce the speed of rainwater dripping, I think we can sediment, we can promote sedimentation of fine particles of soil. So it's like this. We know that there is, it's not exactly a terrace, but it seems to be a terrace because the rainwater dripping with speed reduced, help us to sediment this part, and now we can grow a tree, for example. It's effective. It's effective in semi-arid region. I lack a shortage of rainwater, so we have to do all the possible, as best as possible, in order to help infiltration of rainwater and to sediment soil. Now, organic fertilization in order to increase the humus content, the humus level in soils. The organic manure, so we need to keep up, increase the humus content in soils. How? By incorporating organic matter. Now, maybe you know humus contains 50% carbon, is made of 50% of carbon. Carbon of dioxide. So carbon dioxide enter the plants by the process of photosynthesis. This carbon may produce carbohydrates, sugar, solar food energy, but also the carbon of the dioxide may produce straw, stubble, litter, raíces, and so on. And after harvesting, of course, this organic matter may be decomposed by microbes and produce humus in soil. So the idea is to, of course, incorporate organic matter But if we want to incorporate a lot of organic matter, we have first to produce a lot of biomass, of course, because this organic matter is biomass. But we have to lengthen photosynthesis in order to produce more food energy and crop residues. Crop residues with carbon help farmers to increase the humus content of soil. So, by incorporating organic matters. But it's true that humus contains about 5% of nitrogen. And it's true that after harvesting, if there is a lack, if there is a shortage of nitrogen in soil, microbes cannot decompose the organic matter. The humus is a combination of a lot of carbon at a small quantity of nitrogen, is true, but we need in order to manufacture humus. Microbes cannot manufacture humus if we cannot get a good ratio between carbon and nitrogen in soil. If we cannot produce humus by doing this, carbon of straw is converted into carbon dioxide. It's very important to get this kind of ratio when managing new farming system. It will be very, very, very important. Now, the level of humus in soil can be kept up, can increase by adding manure, dung. But manure may be a good combination of litter, straw, stubble, and of course animal extracta and maybe animal urine too. It's a mixture of litter, solid extracta, urine, and we have to incorporate into soils organic matter, this good ratio with carbon and nitrogen, a good combination of carbon and nitrogen. But it's true that it requires labor force. Producing manure require labor force and maybe require means of transportation, because we have to transport maybe litters to the animal, maybe, so we have, well, it's in some circumstances it may be a little difficult, but I think it's a very good idea to combine in short circuit animal raising system, animal husbandry with cropping systems in order to produce animal production, vegetable production, and humus too, organic matter. That means crop residues and of course solid extracta of animals and urine of animals. Humus may also not only hold water at the root levels of crops, but also humus of soil protects soil from erosion. We say it may increase the structural stability of top layer of soil. It improves the physical condition of the soil, and in some circumstances, it's very good for the biology of soil, earthworm, for example. And with earthworm, the earthworm help us to store the rainwater in soil and avoid dripping because of these galleries. No? The earthworm, the biology of soil with good humus help us to avoid rainwater dripping and promote infiltration of rainwater into the soil. It improves the physical condition of soil and maintains the best condition for the activities of soil organisms, bacteria, earthworm, and we'll see some useful fungi too. Now, of course, by doing this, the soil is made more fertile. We need to manage carbon and nitrogen cycle in short circuit. That means combining in short circuit animal breeding system and cropping system, animal husbandry with cropping system, associate cropping and animal raising system, and make litter for the animals with straw, leaves, sandworms, and stubble, and so on, leading to the production of an abundant manure in order to incorporate this organic matter into their field, into their soils. Now, it's true that we can improve this kind of manure with compost, but compost is also a good combination of products with a lot of carbon and other products with a lot of nitrogen. But I